That's right, baby. We are back. Back on a Saturday, a Figura Obscura Saturday. And as you can see, I'm riding solo today, guys. Just me and you today. Unfortunately, our buddy Ryan Gonzalez feeling a little under the weather today, so he's not able to join us. And late night Eric LeBron has some family stuff going on. So I'm riding solo, but I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you to everybody who is here and joining us for a very special Saturday. I've said this many, many times. These are always some of my favorite shows to do, Saturday shows. We are lucky enough to have a little live stream that goes on Saturdays. And that means we get to talk about the brand new Four Horsemen Studios Figura Obscura releases whenever they come out. And today is no exception. I think most of you out there probably will have already seen the Figura Obscura Ganesha, which was released or announced earlier this morning. Pretty pumped up about it. And on top of that, although I'm riding solo on behalf of the SDL crew, Mrs. Hedgehog, of course, running around, bringing lasagna down to the freezer. That doesn't mean I'm entirely alone. Nope. Today we have a very special guest who's going to join us and talk to us about this new release. You know him. You know his name. Your friend and mine. The Director of Sales and Marketing for Four Horsemen Studios, Mr. Jeremy Girard. What's up, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, dude? Thanks for hopping in on another Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I always look forward to this. I was just talking to Chris about it this morning because I was telling him, hey, when you do your live stream, make sure you do it before 3:00 because I'm going to go on the afternoon show, the Saturday afternoon show. And when I told him that this has become kind of like a tradition where it didn't even start out that way. It just so happened that I was on a couple in a row, and then it was enough of them that it was like, hey, that's really kind of enjoyable for you to be able to come on and be able to talk about this day of drop. Obviously, you guys love having this as part of your show during Figura Obscura Drop Saturdays. So I look forward to this. This, just like the Dorklier review has become part of Figura Obscura Drop Weekend, this has become part of that for me as well.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate you saying that, man. And of course we enjoy it. And it was, like I said, I've said it many, many times before. The Figura Obscura drops are some of my favorite toy events that happen because they're surprises. You never know what they're going to be. They pull from all kinds of different cool things. And we just got lucky enough that we do a Saturday show. So listen, we're happy to be a part of it as much as we can. So we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
To talk about.
Definitely a bit of a surprise. I don't think. I think a lot of people guessed it yesterday after we dropped the teaser. This was certainly one that we weren't trying to be very obscure with the teaser. But I don't think a lot of people, when they had their list of characters we could do, I don't think a lot of people had Ganesha on that list.
Yeah, but there's definitely listen, there's a lot of things going on here. It is I try to be careful a little bit about how I talk about the character when it's like a character or a being from a religion that people can take very seriously. So certainly as I speak about it, I certainly mean I don't intend to not be respectful. I intend to be very respectful of it. So when I say character and things like that, but the character itself, very toyetic, there's a lot going on there, and we'll totally get into it. First of all, first reactions as far as the drop goes, any initial reactions from you or the studio as to how the drop has gone so far and the reception it's getting?
The reception has been wonderful. With this one, more than any other, we wanted to make sure that we had done our due diligence to be respectful and understanding. And you just hit the nail on the head. Ganesha is a deity that is actively worshipped today. You know, the other characters we've done that are deities were the gods of ancient Egypt that we did, you know, last year. Not a lot of people actively worshiping Anubis these days. So this was one that, you know, right from the get-go, we wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing. And, you know, I had mentioned this in the write-up, and I've, you know, answered a few comments about this. You know, we consulted with, you know, members of the Hindu religion. We consulted with subject matter experts to make sure that this was going to be okay, you know, and there's lots of, you know, Ganesha is actually one of the gods that has the most representations out there possible. Like so many people. One of the things I read said pretty much everyone who's part of the Hindu religion has some kind of statue of Ganesha in their home somewhere. So certainly this is not much different than a statue because it's a toy. You know, we use that word toy to mean like plaything, but this is a different kind of toy. It has the same kind of respect and reverence that a statue would. Interestingly, the one thing that I saw that was probably a no-no for Ganesh was socks, because the thing that we saw was that, you know, in the Hindu religion, the feet are considered dirty apparently, and having like a depiction of the god under your feet would be disrespectful. And that, again, that makes total sense. So we tried to really be respectful here and make sure that we were honoring this deity and this religion in every way possible. So my initial reaction today, my initial surprise was how many members of the Hindu religion reached out to us to thank us. And to say, this is amazing. Representation absolutely matters. The fact that you guys make such cool toys and you made such a beautiful and respectful version of this figure is absolutely so cool, of this, you know, this deity and everything. You know, there was a comment in the Cabal where someone was questioning whether this was okay, and I responded to that. And, you know, it is interesting that the people that seem to be questioning it are not members of the Hindu religion. And it's cool to question. It's cool to say like, hey, is this cool? Know that we did do our due diligence. And that's been my biggest surprise today, is how many people reached out to us to genuinely thank us.
Yeah, and listen, I think it's a fair question. It was something that sort of popped up into my head, and I did see that question in the Cabal and your response to it. Now, I mean, knowing you and knowing everybody at the studio, I had zero doubt that this was an issue that had been thought about, vetted, and et cetera. But I was interested to hear sort of the thought process. Thank you. Oops. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And here's some of the thought process behind it, because there is a little bit of a difference here, as you sort of highlighted, when you're talking about like a character that is part of an active religion that millions of people sort of are a part of. And it was something that sort of popped into my head, not in a negative way, but just I was interested in that process as to like, you know, was there reticence, you know, when the idea was, I assume it was Eric's idea to do Ganesh, I presume?
Eric's wanted to do a figure of Ganesh for decades. I mean, we've said before that step number one with Figura Obscura is it's got to be a cool looking toy. Like that's number one. And Ganesha, you know, visually, the way that this deity is represented is very visually interesting. It's a large anthropomorphic character. He's got a head of an elephant. He's got 4 arms. He's covered in all these adornments. He's got a broken tusk. Like, it is a very visually interesting character. So being able to create a figure of that is very appealing. And Eric's wanted to do it for quite some time. I mean, interestingly, he's done other elephant characters. You know, a lot of people today were posting pictures of Poacher, the elephant character from McFarlane Toys Total Chaos. That's one of Eric's favorite pieces that he sculpted in his time at McFarlane. Of course, there's also the Seventh Kingdom figure Ramathor, who is very much inspired by Ganesha, but Eric has never done actually Ganesh. I mean, Ganesh and Ganesha, they're interchangeable names for the same deity. So he had wanted to do it. So, but you're right, there was some reticence in that. And that before we started this project, that's where we started doing our research. And that research began online, just looking up to see what was okay and what wasn't. And then we took it to the next level and we contacted subject matter experts to say, hey, this is what we want to do. And like we showed them renders of the figures, paint masters of the figures, the write-up on the box, the write-up for, the video and stuff. Like every step of the way, we went above and beyond what I wouldn't say above and beyond what we should have done. We did what we should have done. Like we went every step of the way. We consulted with people to make sure that we were, being respectful. And I think that shines through in what we did. I think I saw some people like suggesting that, oh, this was a missed opportunity to do like a hulked up bloody Easter bunny. If that's what you think you're going to get out of Figura Obscura, you don't know what Figura Obscura is about, because you're never going to get that out of Figura Obscura. That is not what this is about at all. It's not about twisted versions, hulked up versions of any character. It's about exploring different characters out there, whether it's through, in this case, world religions, literature, cryptozoology, mythology, legends, holiday traditions. These are all things, characters that are in the public domain. These are all things that that Figura Obscura can be. But the thread through all of them is it is a respectful representation of that character.
Yeah, and that was part of your response that I saw to the one question that I saw in the Cabal earlier, and that, it's very important that this isn't, like you said, a twisted version of something. This is, similar to, when the Ancient Gods of Egypt release happened last year, a lot of people said that, this is the kind of thing that you could see like in a museum as part of an exhibit or in the gift shop or something else. Like you could see this piece of Ganesh as part of like an exhibit to like, as sort of to try to tell the story. And I think of it the same way people have thought about all of the other Figura releases, in that it's an art piece, but it's not just an art piece. It's sort of a stimulus that's, motivates people to learn a little bit more about something that they didn't know about before. This really popped out to me because I am Indian. I'm 50% Indian. I've been to India, but I was not raised Hindu. I was raised Christian. So I'm aware of Ganesha, and I have like a very 20,000 foot view. But I got to be honest with you, I don't have like an intricate, knowledge of a lot of the backstories and different things like that. But this is definitely something that sort of prompts me to kind of look a little bit further.
Dude, I'm exactly the same way, with the exception of the 50% Indian. Definitely not 50% Indian. But I was raised Christian as well. I am a Christian. And, I knew who Ganesha was. I've certainly seen, statues and so forth in like yoga studios and everything. This is a character I'm very familiar with at the surface level. And just like people get educated about some of these characters and stories through Figura Obscura, so do we. There's characters like the Christmas Carol ones or Father Christmas or Krampus that I'm very familiar with. Mm-hmm. But like last year, 2 years ago, when we did Monkey King, I didn't know a lot about Monkey King before that release. Similar with Ganesha, the research I did, I found to be very, very interesting for the character. And I love the fact that it opens it up. And, I've said this before, that the mission of Figura Obscura was never, we want to educate people. That was never part of our mission statement. The fact that that has kind of happened is a wonderful byproduct of what we're doing. But just personally, my personal philosophy is I think being exposed to these different ideas and these different types of cultures and so forth, I think that's a very good thing. I think that this world could certainly use a bit more understanding amongst each other. Mm-hmm. So, I saw someone saying that they wouldn't want to put this in their house because they don't worship Ganesha. And that's totally respectful. If that's part of your religion, there's some people that really believe that this would be considered like a false idol. I completely understand that and respect that opinion. It's going to be in my collection, even though I'm not going to worship Ganesha. it's going to be in my collection, not only as a cool toy, but also as just kind of respect for other people's beliefs and, other people's cultures.
Yeah, 100%. And what's interesting is, whenever you're talking about a religious character, it implicates all kinds of issues, right? And certainly, Chris has the biblical adventures thing going on. That's not the studio. But Chris is, making religious characters, and sort of his take on it, his angle is that he's making action figures based on religious iconography, but that's already in art. So there's already artistic representations of what he's doing out there in the world. And I have seen a lot of people ask sort of a similar question here. So $4.99 super chat from Curtis. Thank you, Curtis. Curtis says, with that being said, does that mean all active religions are on the table if it's cool?
I mean, again, if it's something that would make a cool toy that Eric is inspired to do and that we could do respectfully, absolutely, that would be something. Like I saw someone like very snarkily suggesting we do Muhammad. No, I can't do that. That would be massively disrespectful, and we would never do something like that. And that's not a nice thing to say, So it goes back again to what I just said. Like, is it a cool toy? Like, a lot of the stuff that Chris is doing with Biblical Adventures, they're very, very cool. They wouldn't fit the kinds of figures we would do anyway. Besides the fact that we wouldn't want to encroach on what Chris is doing, there's a lot of characters that we just wouldn't do. It wouldn't fall into that category of making a kind of Legion style toy that I think we would be excited for. There's certainly some. If we're just looking at the Christian religion, yeah, St. George is a cool one. I'm sure we could do a very cool St. George. Even some of the ones he's done, Michael the Archangel, very, very cool. So yes, Curtis, other religions and other deities and so forth, active or otherwise, they are certainly not off the table as long as we would be able to meet those specific tenets of what we're trying to do. Cool toy that we can do respectfully and honor the character, or in this case, the religion that it represents.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to hear you sort of say that too, because without knowing anything at all, as a fan, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, the fact that Chris is already doing a wide range, of characters that are from like the Christian religion and doing it a certain way, to me, that would sort of seem like what probably makes it a little bit less likely that the Horsemen would think about doing it in Figura Obscura. And maybe it does, because you're probably not going to do the same exact version of a character that he's already done. But I do think it's interesting to hear you say that that's not something you'd necessarily be opposed to if it made sense.
Yeah, no, I will say this. We don't have any current plans to do other characters from active world religions. We don't have any plans right now to do, characters from, biblical stories and so forth. But it's not something that I will immediately say, no, I cannot imagine that ever happening. Do I imagine a vicious Easter bunny covered in blood? No, that one I'm actually comfortable saying that's probably never going to happen. A sexy Mrs. Claus, like, the Twisted Christmas stuff that McFarlane did? No, we're not going there. Like, that's not what this line is about. So those I'm comfortable saying, no, you're not going to see that. But some of this other stuff, yeah, I don't know. Figura Obscura hopefully has a lot of years left in it. Who knows what we're going to see, in the future.
All right. So, and I do want to talk about the figure and the release itself in just a minute or two, because there's a lot going on there.
Sure.
But I figured it made sense to sort of start talking about the drop itself, because it is structured a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So certainly, my buddy Patrick Boyle and other people have been sort of hypothesizing that there might be a Figura release coming up soon. Mm-hmm. This weekend is probably a week or two earlier than some people, myself included, would have predicted. Part of the reason for that is because we just ended this massively successful Baethir the Dragon campaign. And before we close today, I'd love to get a couple of final thoughts from you on that.
Love to.
But it sort of seems like you guys have structured this Figura drop with that in mind, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like, so we have the current drop that's going on right now today, but there's not going to be a PM drop like there is normally. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things to touch on there. So these are in-stock items. And, you know, one of the challenges with Figura Obscura is there's a point, it's got to arrive before we put it up for sale. The only one we put up for sale before it was actually in the warehouse was Monkey King, because it was delayed, but it was on the way, and we had that slot for it. So Ganesh came in maybe a month ago that it actually arrived. So it's been sitting in the warehouse since that time. And, you know, there's a very realistic challenge when it comes to warehouse space for us. We're a very small company. We have a very small amount of space. So our business is not about, you know, stocking and storing stuff. Our business is about getting it in and getting it out. So there was a sense of like, okay, when we realized this had come in a little bit earlier than we first expected, it was like, okay, let's look at the calendar to see where we can fit this. And it's one of the reasons when everyone was hypothesizing that we were going to extend the Dragon campaign, that I was very vocal in saying, no, we are not doing that. Like, there's a whole schedule of other things we have planned. We cannot extend the Dragon. That being said, we are totally cognizant of the fact that a lot of people went big on the Dragon, especially in that final weekend, and this may be coming a little too soon for them. So what we tried to do over the years is on Figura Obscura drop day is do 2 drops, one in the morning and then one in the night. And this time we said, okay, you know what? Let's structure this a little bit differently. Instead of doing one at night, let's just do one during the morning. We'll put a little bit more in that drop. Okay. We'll add a little bit extra there. So hopefully that will last through the weekend. But instead of doing another drop tonight or tomorrow, let's push it into next month. Let's give it at least a couple more weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, 4. I don't know. I don't have the exact date yet, but let's give it a couple more weeks to allow people a little bit of extra time to recover. You know, this is not like it's a wave, right? This is not a $500 all in or even a $350 all in. It is a single figure. It's a more expensive figure. It's $70. But that was kind of our thought. It's like, okay, for those people, because I mean, that's the other point with the Dragon is, well, a lot of people back the Dragon. Not all of our customers bought the Dragon. There's a lot of people that haven't purchased anything from us on Four Horsemen in quite some time. So this was an opportunity. We're always trying to figure out, like, how do we appease as many people as possible while at the same time, if there's something that we can do, like doing this split drop to maybe accommodate a wider audience, that's always good too. I do think that sometimes, because at the end of the day, our job is to sell toys. And we routinely will do things that make it harder for us to sell toys because we're trying to appease so many people as possible. It's not going to change. That's just who we are. We do try to take that stuff into account. But that's why we structured it the way that we did with that split drop. So if you really want Ganesha and it's just not a good time for you, whether it's because it's right after the Dragon or not, absolutely give it a couple weeks. We will do a second drop. While most of the inventory is in the first drop, it's not like I left 50 figures for the second drop. There's still a good chunk of figures for that second drop if you have to wait for that one.
Yeah, and even with that increased stock as part of the AM drop today, as you can see, as of 3:27 p.m., the all-ins, so the all-in packages have sold out. The allotment for today has sold out. So that's it until the next, whenever the second drop is, right, for the all-ins?
Yeah, so we did hold back some all-ins and some pins for the second drop. So while those are both sold out right now, we will have less of them in the second drop, but we will have both all-ins and pins as well as the figure itself in that second drop.
And I realized that you and your generally pretty good at giving us a lot of cool information during these conversations without revealing anything that you really can't. I'm looking at this, reading tea leaves, and I'm like, all right, well, if they're releasing the Figura stock that they have right now in April, are they making room for something else that might be coming out in May? Anything you can say about that, or is that not really something you can talk about?
So it's not really something I'm going to talk about. There's a lot. What I will say is this. There's a lot of questions that have been going around about what's going to happen with all this tariff situations. It's a very unusual, unprecedented time right now. Things are changing so quickly, and we're trying to figure out what the best approach to everything is going to be. We are intentionally not getting out there right now and making a lot of statements because we're trying to figure out what the plan is going to be. So as soon as we are able to make any announcements and let people know, I think everybody knows that we're wildly transparent when it comes to this stuff. As soon as we can let people know about what's going on and what at least the short-term future holds, we will absolutely let people know.
Yeah, and then my take on all that stuff, because you're seeing different stakeholders in the whole process reacting differently. Some companies are just saying, let's wait and see. You're seeing other companies like BBTS kind of being a little bit more proactive and be like, here's what we think is going to happen. Here's what we're going to have to do about it. As a consumer and not a producer myself, to me, it sort of seems like we kind of just have to wait and see. Like, we don't know if any of these things are going to be in place 3 months from now. We don't know what the effects are going to be.
A lot happened in a very short time. Like, this escalated very, very quickly. There's a lot going on. You know, where everything stands today, it's unmanageable for anybody. Like, nobody is going to be able to move forward with the way things are. And that gives me hope that, okay, there's going to be some deals, there's going to be some changes. I don't know what those deals are going to be.
Right.
But I'm confident in saying that the next 30 days, we're going to see additional things coming up and changing. So really right now, it is so much happening in such a small span of time that, again, we are trying to figure out exactly what we are going to need to do that's in the best interest of our fan base and our company.
Sure. All right. And I think that's completely fair. Bringing it back now a little bit to this release, getting this question a lot. And I'll preface by saying that I know that the general policy of the Horsemen is that you don't say what you're going to have at shows. A couple of times you've said something just to sort of manage expectations, which I think is fair. We got a bunch of people in the chat asking if
they're going to be at shows.
Yeah, if they'll be at shows. You know, we got ToyCon New Jersey is next weekend. I'll be there on Sunday. Lehigh is going to be the weekend after that. Do you know anything about that you can say, or we just kind of have to wait and see?
So we are planning to bring them to some shows. So we are at a point where we have a number of shows, both Street Team and you mentioned ToyCon New Jersey, that are coming up. So we will have Ganesha at those shows. They will be very limited numbers.
Right.
Okay. So if somebody is like, I'm not going to buy it online because I'm going to get it at the show, you're not guaranteed to get it at the show. But if you wait to get it at the show, you're going to miss the first drop. Like the first drop, I can tell you right now with what is left, it's not going to make it through next weekend. Okay. It might not make it through this weekend. So next weekend is Kane County and
that's right.
The show, the Mythic West Coast Mythic Meetup. Both of those shows will have a very small number of these, a very small number. Because again, the bulk of these are meant for online. We do hold some back for shows. And lately what we had been doing, like in the past, what we had done was we had sold our online stock, and then there were so many people asking us to put them back up that we would take from our show stock and put it into online. So when I said to you earlier, we added a little bit more to this first drop than we normally would, That's where we got it. Like the stuff that we normally would have reserved for shows, we took some of that stock and put it online. So less at shows. There will be some, just don't count on it, you know, and it will be because at shows, obviously we have to charge a little bit more to cover the taxes and stuff. It'll probably be, it's a $70 figure. So my guess, it'll probably be like 75 at shows.
All right. And it's kind of interesting because it's sort of like I wasn't keeping track hour by hour of when things sold out, but you know, obviously the pins always seem to sell out fairly quickly for these Figura drops, and then the all-ins are the next ones to sort of fall, and that's happened already.
Yeah.
One thing I wondered about, and I don't know, I have no doubt you've thought about it. I don't know if the returns are in yet. Following the Beathir the Dragon campaign, which reached all the way across the adult collecting community, probably beyond that too. We've talked about that a few times. I was wondering if that sort of campaign that was talked about so much would have brought in new people that are going to be paying attention to Four Horsemen releases that weren't before. I'm sure that's happened. I wonder if you've thought about, or if you have anything to say about whether or not you might already be seeing that based on the first non-dragon drop post-dragon.
It's tough to tell because we always get a lot of fresh orders, fresh faces with Figura Obscura anyway.
Yeah.
Like a large percentage of orders for every Figura are first-time buyers. It blows me away every single time. Figura has been a wonderful door opener for us. And, you know, early on, we always said that like those PowerCon debut figures were a wonderful door opener because it got people who were like, oh, I don't know who these figures are, but this guy looks like Skeletor, so I'm going to buy it. And that made them say, wow, this thing is super cool. I got to get more of these. That has largely been replaced by Figura Obscura. People, I've said this before, but like people who know our stuff, like they've seen it online or whatever, but they've never bought one. And then they see something like Jacob Marley or Headless Horseman or Ganesha, and they're like, that's super cool. I want to get one of those because I know who that character is. And that opens the door. So we see a lot of that anyway. But you are right, the Beathir campaign. I mean, even just looking at something like our follower count on like Instagram. Our follower count on Instagram jumped so significantly during that campaign, so much so that we were getting close to 50,000. And Brad and I were like planning, okay, when we get to 50,000, we're going to do a contest, we're going to do a giveaway and all this. And we figured that we would hit 50 like sometime in probably the coming weeks, well after the Beathir campaign. And we hit it in the middle of the Beathir campaign. And we were just like, okay, well, I can't launch a contest right now because, you know, from a marketing standpoint, I don't want to draw any limelight away from Beathir onto a contest. So I'm like, okay, we're going to have to acknowledge that we hit 50,000 and let people know that we're going to do something to celebrate it down the road. We're now like well over 50,000. So we definitely saw a lot of people take notice of us and start following us during that campaign. And even, you know, after Legions Con, when we first debuted it. And then the Figura Obscura just follows suit. But yeah, dude, I hope that this did open the door. I've seen a number of comments that people have said that Beathir was their first purchase, and they've since gone to, you know, online retailers or to Four Horsemen and picked up a couple figures. So anything that opens the doors and gets people to buy their first Legions, I think is an absolute win for us.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I was anticipating, but, you know, we'll see how it goes. It certainly does seem like the train keeps on, you know, you wonder, like, you know, that toy collecting, like everything else, ebbs and flows, right? It goes up and down. And, you know, there was following the pandemic where you had this massive boom, like one of the biggest booms we've seen probably since like the 80s. And then you're expecting like a lull there. But Kevin Lone Wolf Labs from Lone Wolf Labs says, I think tickets for Legions Con will sell out much faster this year. Many more people are into Four Horsemen products than they were a year ago. I'm seeing it across all my selling platforms. You know, Kevin makes a lot of great dios that I purchased from him, huge in the Legions community. Look what happened with the hotels. I mean, like, it sold out quicker than we've ever seen before.
Well, I think what's happening too with Legions Con is, you know, last year we really got a lot of those non-Legions like influencers
Yep.
to be involved, and they had a really, really good time. You know, when you have people like Robo
You can
and,
touch here, by the way, if you want.
yeah, I mean, and Wade and you know, Valaverse, you have all these people that are talking about what a great show it was. And that gets outside of our community, you know, like, I mean, what we're doing right here today, we are talking largely to a Legions audience. Like, I look at the people in the chat and I know all of these people. I've spoken and had personal interactions with, you know, pretty much all these people, which is amazing. I love that about our community. But to keep growing, we've got to go beyond that bubble. And we saw that at Legions Con last year with the attendees. We saw that with the Dragon hitting the toy news cycle outside of Legions. That's just good for everybody. Like, every one of us, both at the studio and in the fan base, as more people come and get into this, it's going to allow us to do bigger and cooler things. And I mean, it's so tough because you always have that kind of analogy of like that indie band that you're into that suddenly gets big and people are like, well, this sucks. I loved them when they had a very small fan base. That's something that we are very cognizant of, to be like, I don't care how much larger the fan base gets. We're going to stay true to ourselves. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. And I, for one, know that this community, it polices itself. It, you know, allows itself to be what it is. You know, this community has become so amazing because of the community. It's not like something that we necessarily did. It's been a joint effort. So we all want this to continue. I personally think no matter how much larger it gets, it's still going to be amazing.
Yeah, just for some reason I had this idea in my head, this vision in my head of being at Legions Con, and Eric Miller is in the back saying, "Play Otho! Play Otho!" Twizzler19 says, I got into Legions just last year and I'm excited to go to my first Legions Con and meet fellow fans. Welcome, 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 Twizzler.
Yeah, you're going to have an absolute blast. It is going to be so, so much fun. I mean, we've always said that our goal with Legions Con is, if you go to Legions Con, we want you to have so much fun and feel so welcome that you can't imagine ever missing another. And if you skip Legions Con and you see all the coverage, you say, I need to go there next year. And so far, based on the feedback we've gotten, we've succeeded in that mission.
Yeah, I mean, that was my experience. I've told the story many, many times, and I'm going to keep telling it. 2021 was, well, that's not true. 2021 was the first time I went as a Legions fan. I was actually there in 2019 for the first one.
Yeah.
But like, and I have pictures of me. I went both Saturday and Sunday to the Toy Con that year, and the Legions Con was happening like in that side room.
Yeah,
and what's funny, there were so many people in that room that I would become friends with in the years to come. And I didn't even know it. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Curtis with another super chat. Thanks, bud. 1999. Very generous. Wow. Thanks, man. Curtis says on May 3rd, so 2 weeks from today, Four Horsemen will have a presence on the East Coast at Lehigh Valley. I'll be there at the Lehigh Valley Toy Show with Len LaGuardia and the whole Wolf King Customs crew and a bunch of other people that are going to be there.
Yep.
And also on the same date on the West Coast at the Mythic Meetup. Is this the first time you Four Horsemen have gone coast to coast on the same day? Can you tell us who will be at each one? Obviously, I don't know the answers to either one of those questions, but yes, Brick something, my good buddy Brick has been pumping the Mythic Meetup on the West Coast. I think is going to be a big part of it too.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool.
So I don't know. We've had other events where we were in two places at the same day. I can't 100% say for sure whether it was like as West Coast, East Coast as California and Pennsylvania, or if it was, a little more Midwest. But it's not the first time that we've had two events on the same day. Interestingly, we have two events next week as well. Next week, we're going to be in New Jersey for ToyCon New Jersey, Saturday and Sunday. And we're also going to be at Kane County in Chicago on the Sunday. So That week we have both West Coast and more, I don't know if people consider Chicago Midwest, but we have those two locations. And then to Curtis's point, the following week, we are definitely East Coast, West Coast. For that week, for the Mythic Meetup in Lehigh Valley, the Mythic Meetup you mentioned is an event that is a street. They're both street team events.
Yep.
That West Coast Mythic Meetup, that's a street team event. That this will be the third annual one that helps to run. From the studio, Nate Barch will be there. David Williams, who, while he's not a full-time member of the studio, is a contributing artist. We're doing more and more with David these days. David's going to be out there as well. Curtis is going to be out there. Owen Ertling, who is the namesake of Sir Owain, was a member of the team in the early days of Mythic Legions. He's going to be out there as well. Cool. Yeah, and then there's another. Carver Customs is going to be there. You just mentioned Brick is going to be there. There's a whole bunch of other people that are going out to be a part of that. But those are the ones that immediately come to mind. While on the East Coast at Lehigh Valley, that is a Wolf King Customs run show. Yep. So obviously Len will be there with his crew. I know for a fact Cookie will be there representing the studio. I'm not sure who else will show up. A lot of times Joe, Diego, they'll go out to shows like that. But the only one that I can for sure say will be there will be Cookie.
Joe Gonzalez will be at the Cali Mythic Meetup, so that's really cool. I'll be at Lehigh. I think I might even have a table at Lehigh. I think Guaisagwe will have a table there as well, so that should be a fun time.
Nice. Are you guys going to ToyCon next weekend?
I am going to ToyCon, but I think I can only go on Sunday.
Okay.
I know sometimes you attend ToyCon. I know you can't always go both days, so I don't know if you know what you're doing.
I'll just do Saturday. I'll come home. Sundays are usually slower anyway, so for me to go there and I end up not really being needed all that much on the Sunday. Mm-hmm. So it'll allow me, because I go to the studio a few days early to get some work done, it'll allow me to get back and at least spend a little bit of weekend time with the family.
What's cool is that you meet so many people from the different conventions and Legions cons and things like that, is that, now there's other plans that get made around these different things. I'm in a couple of different group chats with some of my friends from the community, and people are talking about, having a barbecue for around ToyCon. So people will go to ToyCon and then go to somebody's house for a barbecue.
That's great.
And ToyCon is your business partner, Joe Viteris. That's moving on up too. I've noticed that they have more, what would you call it, personalities that are going to be at the show. There's some wrestling. I think Jimmy Hart's going to be there on Saturday.
Jimmy Hart, Doink the Clown, a
bunch of Santana.
Yeah. So I don't personally have anything to do with ToyCon. That's Joe's show. Yep. But I can remember ToyCon back pre-COVID. And that's when I was attending as a fan. And then we had that whole, you talk about that Legions Con time where I was certainly more involved there. And there was so much going on at ToyCon. There were food trucks outside. There was family entertainment. There was cosplay. There was so much happening. And then COVID hit. Yep. And, not only did it stop all shows for a while, but when they came back, it was really hard to get up and running with stuff like that. I feel like, Joe has spent the last, couple years trying to get back to build the momentum back up to where he was. Because that's the other thing with shows is I will say that the amount of toy shows there are these days are insane.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it was this prolific before COVID. I feel like after COVID, you mentioned that spike in spending on collectibles. And then after COVID, those first shows that started coming back, people were so antsy to get out that some of those shows were so heavily attended and there was so much money changing hands that I think a lot of people were like, hey, I want to run a toy show too. There's money in this. And you saw a lot of shows spring up. And, that's one of the challenges as a show promoter is back in the day, you'd have a show and fans would be like, well, I've got to go to this toy show because it's my only opportunity. Now it's kind of like, well, if I skip this week, I have my pick the next 4 weekends in a row. There are toy shows all within an hour, 2-hour radius of me. So it's at the point now that like promoters really need to figure out how they're going to differentiate themselves, what they're going to offer beyond just come in and buy stuff. And that's one of the things Joe's been working on really hard.
Yeah. And I think, listen, you got to try different things. I know certainly like I'm also a wrestling fan in addition to being like a collector guy. So that caught my attention. I was like, oh, sure. I'm going to go meet Tito Santana on Sunday. That's great. So it's funny or it's interesting, not funny. It's interesting to think about like how that stuff gets planned out. You know, like PowerCon used to occupy this space in August that was kind of all its own. And now IshCon sort of took that position last year, but now IshCon is going to be in May. So there's some, I feel like there's a little bit of a hole there in that August area that is waiting for PowerCon to come back or something else.
PowerCon was such a great show because, you know, it's tough. We're still a small company, right? So we've got Legions Con in November, and it's really hard. Like one of the things we saw with IshCon last year is that we had a great group of people that showed up, but it wasn't a crazy amount of people, right? Definitely not like what we would see at a PowerCon. And that's one of the things we realized is that it's really tough for us to like headline more than one show. You know, we're just not at the point where we can do that. Legions Con is our headlining show, and something like PowerCon was great because we could be there and we could be a legitimate draw and a lot of people could come out to see us. But the show itself had so much else going on with it. So, you know, that's one of the things I think Ish is trying to do this year. Our presence at IshCon this year is very, very different. Last year we had the whole team and we did the reveal special and the special figures and stuff. You know, this year it's a street team show. Jim is going to be the representative going down. Ish will be selling Legion stuff. There's no reveals or live streams or anything like that. But IshCon itself is a lot more varied this year. It's not just a Legions event. You know, he's really trying to embrace the independent toy creators and bring them in to see if he can, you know, create something special specifically around that community and that audience. So, Ish is a great guy. I think he's going to he runs a great show. I'm sure it's going to be really, really fun. But I agree with you that there's definitely a void towards the end of the summer that that void that PowerCon left.
Yeah, and Ish is definitely putting his best foot. He's trying different things too, and it's a great, you know, it's down in North Carolina, great area for a toy show down there too. I would love to make it down there if I could. May is kind of crazy, but there's a bunch of people down there that I would love to get to go see. You know, you got Jordan and Van, Tanya and Kevin, and so it'll be great. I'd like to take a minute here just for a second. I do have a giveaway, you know, for these Figura shows. We try to make it special. You know, we've given away a Monkey King, a Jacob Marley, a bunch of different ones. And I looked around and I do have one more unopened Figura Obscura Jacob Marley to give to one of the listeners here. I appreciate people that come and check out the show every week. So this is sort of like a little bit of a thank you, try to make it kind of special. So for the people in the chat, if you would like your chance to win a Figura Obscura Jacob Marley. Now this is the original. This is not the retailer version. This is the original version. The hashtag, as a celebration of what we're actually going to talk about for a little bit now. Figura Obscura Ganesh. Hashtag Ganesh. Let me put my little banner up. Make sure I put the right one on there. And again, so the giveaway is not a Ganesh. It is a Figura Marley to celebrate Figura Obscura. So that's the hashtag. I'll do that towards the end of the show.
Perfect.
But... here we go. So, if it's okay with you, I kind of wanted to talk about the release itself a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I was pretty much blown away, like a lot of other people were. This is a massive, massive set, and to start off with, it's a massive figure. So as soon as it was announced, the first question a lot of people had was, okay, what size are we talking here? This is going to be a brute scale figure, right?
Yes. So he stands, if you put the crown on top of his head, he's about 9.25 inches tall. The best examples would be to check out Dork Lear's review video, because he does a lot of size comparisons. You know, he shows them like he's almost the size of Desabolus, the vampire brute ogre figure.
Okay.
He's almost as tall as Desabolus. I mean, pretty much just as tall. Obviously, the body is smaller, but with that tall crown, he goes that high, a little bit shorter than the Arakagor figure. So he is built on a brute scale body. He is a larger figure, and he's wide too. Like, actually, if you looked at the Frankenstein figure that we did last year, the box of Frankenstein was double the width of a normal figure. This is double the depth, right? So it's the same width as a normal Figura box, but it is literally twice as deep as regular Figura boxes would be.
Yeah. And again, Bill has a really great review. Again, that's a massive part of the Figura tradition now. And he gives a really great look at the figure, runs it through its paces. And you can see right at the beginning of his video, the boxes. This is a different box than you guys have ever used before, right?
Yeah, because that's the thing with Figuras is, well, the majority of them have fit inside of that standard size. I mean, I guess we call it standard size box. We've had to break out of that for, obviously, Headless Horseman. We had to break out of that for Frankenstein's creature. And then we had to do this for Ganesha. He was just too deep. The figure itself is big. The accessories are big, like something like that kind of stool that he sits on. It is a large piece. To cram all this stuff in there and get it to, be nicely organized and protected, we needed that extra depth. Because as you can see from that photo, this thing is absolutely stacked with accessories.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's almost intimidating. I'm not even sure sort of like where to begin here. You have a ton of the different jewelry pieces and the crown and the fruit and everything. What would you say? Do you have a piece here that's your favorite?
This is like really the sum of the parts. Like, everything works really well together. I know, like with all of our figures, people are going to get this and they're going to find incredibly innovative ways to use some of the different pieces. And there's some cool stuff, the beads, that go around the necklace. They're big. And then you've got, even in that photo, he's wearing the jewelry, like part of the jewelry on his chest, but that's like a separate piece as well that totally comes off. And then you got all those bracelets. So I think people are going to do really cool things with this. But for me, I was really excited just to build the figure and put all of these pieces together on the character. You've got the ability to put those bracelets in. There's a couple anklets. You can do them in different places based on what you think looks best to you. But you can get all of them on there.
And then there's 3.5 sets of hands.
Yeah, because one of those hands, it's similar to what we did with the Headless Horseman, where we did like the hand that you could put the head on. So that hand right there that has the peg, he's got 2 open hands that you could rest like the fruit plate on, or that plate of sweets, like that's modaka. I think I said that properly. But underneath that plate of sweets, there's actually a little hole that you can plug right into that hand with the peg to give it a little bit of extra support.
Yeah. What's funny is one of the things I saw people picking out of the set was the fruit and the food. They're like, oh, we could use that for so much stuff.
I hear Trevor talk about that all the time, that, with toy photography, one of the great things about Figura is there are so many different like accessory pieces that toy photographers love that stuff because they work them into the environments, work them into what they're doing. I've seen so many people use the Jacob Marley safe in like different types of toy photography, just using it as a safe. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure this fruit's going to appear in a lot of different toy photos.
So, and again, Bill went through this very well. But so there's two sets of arms. What's the deal with those? The reason why there's two sets?
So because Ganesha is always depicted as having 4 arms. So 2 of those arms plug into the back.
Yep.
And this torso is, I saw some people bemoaning the fact that we didn't add the plugs into the back like we did with Kragnar and so forth. And that was a tough decision for us. It's like, okay, again, this comes down to the respect thing where Ganesh is depicted with 4 arms. And yes, we know people are going to buy this, tear it apart, and use it for its component pieces. But if we add those plugs in there, we're knowingly like giving you a deity that we're basically telling you to pull apart. So again, this is like, there's no right way or wrong answer to this, but we felt like, you know what? Maybe down the road, we'll develop plugs or something for it. Maybe we'll we're going to use that body again, and it's not going to always have 4 arms. But for this particular release, we wanted to make sure that we were being respectful about it. But that is why there are 4 different arms, because Ganesha is always represented as being a 4-armed character.
Yeah, and I think it came out pretty incredible the way it looks with all 4 arms. Like it's a picture a lot of people will recognize from any number of places that they've been. But I think this is a really cool photo where you see a lot of the accoutrement and the soft goods on the figure, and also all 4 arms. Yeah,
it's definitely, I mean, it is a big figure. It's with the soft goods on it, with the multiple pieces, it's not going to be, this is not a hand candy figure. Like, this is not the kind of figure like the Skeleton Legion Builder or the Legendary Barbarian, where you're just going to want to play with it and put it into all different poses and have it on your desk. This is the kind of figure, it's going to be able to strike a lot of different poses, but this is the kind of figure that I think you're going to get. You're going to put it in a pose that you really like, and you're going to put it on display in your collection.
I'm seeing a lot of good. So we've got here, Terrence says, I wonder if this new torso will lend itself to the Ghost of Christmas Present. Who knows?
All I can say is, the only thing you can expect from Figura Obscura is to expect the unexpected. So whenever you look at something and say, oh, that's what they're going to do, don't count your chickens.
And from the back, like, it's clean from the back.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is like, I was going to call it the money shot, but I mean, this is like the really cool where he's on the pedestal, all the arms in. Bill, actually, I put a picture in the slideshow from his review.
He has a great one too. Yep.
Yeah, that's from like the beginning of the review.
Yep. And I have mine in my display sitting similar to that as well, with one leg up and everything. It's going to take you a couple seconds to get it balanced and everything, but I've had it balanced for weeks like that, and I haven't had any problems. It hasn't fallen. So once you get it in that pose, like once you are able to, find the way to balance it on the pedestal, it's totally solid.
Oh, sorry. Threw this in there. Just be like, hey, I was in India at one point. I'm the right guy to talk to about this.
Very cool. Although
this is not actually authentic Indian clothing here. This is one of those tourist things where you could pay for a photograph. So this was not actually my wedding or anything like that. But one of my favorite parts, or one of my favorite aspects of a lot of the Figura Obscura releases, is actually the packaging. The box itself, because so much thought goes into it. These are releases that really, that the box itself, the presentation really does make it feel like a premium figure.
Yep.
And I understand too from Bill's review that some of the artwork here, and we're used to Nate Barch really going above and beyond with some of the great things that he puts in the artwork. But this was more than one individual participated in this artwork. Isn't that right?
Yeah, this one. So Tom Tolman he's been someone we've been working with for a while now. He started out just helping Nate do like some layout stuff, like, because a lot of the packaging is just rote layout work where, when you're doing all of the bios on the sides of the packaging, the layout's already there. You're just swapping photos and text. So he started doing that. And then we've been doing so much new art that he did some work for us on the Necronominus wave. So he actually painted the shot that's on the Sir Uchak box that shows the Crown City. So he painted the Crown City, and Nate contributes as well. Nate art directs this. Nate goes in and adds some embellishments on top of what Tom has done, but Tom did that for us. Tom also actually did the packaging for the Graveyard Skeletons. So,
okay.
Yep. So I had come up with what I wanted for the Graveyard Skeletons box. And then Nate worked with Tom to get that executed. But in this particular case here, Tom did the background that's like the magnetic cover. So you can see a little bit of it on the sides there. That background is what he did. And it was a very it was kind of a time crunch type issue where the Figura projects take a very long time because there's so much new art on it. Nate had roughed out this background area for Ganesh, and he ended up giving that to Tom, and Tom finished up the painting there.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking like there's so much work seems to go into these releases, and they're just a single release. Like whereas sometimes you have a ton of work going into a full wave. These are just single releases that are getting dropped without anybody knowing what they are ahead of time or not knowing for sure how well it's going to be received or purchased. But these things scream passion project. So I think that's why so many people like me love these the most.
And it's excessive. Like, let's be honest. The amount of new art we invest in on these boxes, it is not a smart business decision because realistically, I could argue that we would sell just as many figures without all of that approach, but it wouldn't be Figura Obscura. And that's one of the great things about this company is it's not all dollars and cents. It's not all, does that make business sense? Then the answer is no. Like, we love these figures. You know what you just said, that it makes it a premium release. It adds so much to it. We agree. It's why we do it. It's why we're like, no, for us, this is a worthwhile investment. A worthwhile investment doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make you more money. In some cases, it just adds more love to these figures, and that gets translated into how our fans actually feel about them. This is a beautiful package. I love the fact that one of the things that Nate illustrated was we chose a story. The Figura Obscura lately, the releases have been coming with those little booklets. We started that with Mask of the Red Death just because we were like, hey, it'd be cool to actually put the short story in the box. And then that has now become a part of something that's every Figura has got those little booklets in them. So with this particular one, what we thought would be a lot of fun was not only a little bit of information about the character, but also I did some research, and there's a lot of really interesting stories about Ganesh. So I chose 5 stories, and I read a whole bunch of different versions of those stories, and then I retold them. It's the same thing that I did for the Gods of Ancient Egypt, where I read multiple versions of the same general story, because every version is slightly different, right? I read multiple versions, and then I told my version of that story. So that's what I did exactly for these as well. One of them is called The Wisdom of Ganesha, and it's right here on this page. It's on the package, and it's that piece of art where it was an interesting story about Ganesha and his brother, who's the Hindu god of war, they were, at home with their mother and father, Shiva and goddess Parvati, and this mystic or whatever came and offered them this magic mango, which is, let's be honest, the coolest part of this entire packaging is the magic mango. That magic mango. We almost made the magic mango one of the pins with the set because I just thought it would have been hysterical to have a pin of that mango. But I digress. The story is that this mango grants great wisdom and so forth, but it can't be shared. So Shiva and Parvati didn't know which one of their two children to give it to. So they made a contest that who could ever travel around the world 3 times first would get the mango. So the Karteka, the god of war, he jumps on his peacock and he starts racing around the world.
Yep.
He makes his first pass and Ganesh is sitting there and he's thinking. And Ganesh ends up getting up and he walks around his mother and father once, twice, 3 times. And they look at him very puzzled and they're like, what are you doing? And he says, well, you're my parents. You are my whole world. Walking around you 3 times is the same as going around the world, which I love it. I love that story because it's such a cop-out, but it's smooth. Like, dude, he's a chill dude. Like, he was like, you know what? I'm going to think this problem through. How can I solve this problem in a creative way? And they give him the mango. And then when his brother comes and sees that he lost the contest, he realizes that jumping into action is not always necessarily the best way to solve the problem, that fully considering the problem and coming up with a creative solution sometimes is the right answer. And it certainly was in this case. So I love that story. It's represented on the box, it's represented in the booklet, and it's represented in this wonderful piece of art by Nate Barch.
Yeah, it's a cool, and there's like a little bit of a moral there of like, all right, so what was the purpose here? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you actually trying to accomplish getting around the world 3 times? Or are you trying to accomplish getting the mango? So
it's cool. It's like I said, and there's some interesting stories in there. I had to choose from a bunch. There's one story about why Ganesha has a broken tusk. Mm-hmm. That is one of the stories in there. There's a story about his prodigious appetite and how that ties in. There's a story. Ganesh is known as the teaser. You can see that text on the page here that says there are no obstacles to the next Figura Obscura. That was a reference to Ganesh being considered the remover of obstacles.
Right.
So he's a deity that people will pray to at the start of a new endeavor. Right. They pray for his favor for the successful conclusion or the successful embarking on some kind of new endeavor. So all of that is, very cool aspects of this particular deity that we tried to enlighten people to or inform people of inside of that little booklet.
Cool. Very, very cool. Wanted to touch base again, coming back now to the figure. We have multiple options as far as the trunk goes too, right?
Yeah, so same thing here. Eric wasn't sure which one he wanted. He wanted to do, a nice fully posed one. Because again, one of the things that we learned as well is apparently if the trunk is going off towards the side that we used, that is more of a, I guess, secular version of the deity, one that's not meant to be worshipped. Versus if it's going the other way, it would be more of an official religious icon type thing. Like that's one of the things that we were told. So Eric, sculpted that trunk so it had that really nice dynamic shape. But then it's also the kind of piece that's just begging to be a bendy. So trying to decide which one do we do in true Four Horsemen fashion, Eric Treadaway fashion, the answer was let's do both.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yep.
Mastodonte here with a question. Do the Codal existing in mythos affect the possibility of Mesoamerican deities in Figura Obscura?
No, not at all. It's, if if that's something that we wanted to do, the fact that we've touched on that, like we've used some of those cultural influences on characters in Mythic, that would have no bearing. Like we're not going to say, oh, if Eric was really inspired to do Quetzalcoatl or, any of the other Mesoamerican type representations, just because we've played in that sandbox a little bit in Mythic Legions wouldn't mean that he wouldn't want to do it. If anything, it might be beneficial.
Make it more likely.
We might actually have some parts we could already use. He wouldn't have to sculpt something. That's one of the funny things with Figura is, dude, it was never meant to be this. Like Krampus, Headless Horseman, those were what Figura was created to be. It was meant to be like, hey, we can add a new head, a couple new accessories, and bang, we've got a brand new figure. Mm-hmm. It's why Krampus has leg armor, right? If we were doing Krampus today, he would not have leg and wrist armor. He just wouldn't. But that was a kind of a compromise. That's what Figura was about back then. Because of the success of Figura, it's allowed us to do figures like Monkey King that have tons of new parts, or Frankenstein that was literally head to toe brand new parts. Ganesha is almost head to toe brand new parts as well. So it's allowed us to do that. But yeah, I mean, if we had some existing pieces, it would be wonderful to be able to work those into a Figura as long as it made sense.
Yeah, Eric Miller's just kidding here, guys. He said Krampus version 2 confirmed. Just kidding.
I mean, it would definitely be a cool one to revisit because it's like, I think Krampus
not a no.
Same category as like a lot of our early Mythic figures, right? Like you look at a character like Gideon Heavensbrand, and and you look at Gideon Heavensbrand 2, and you're like, wow, look at what they were able to do now that the line has reached where it's reached. This is not a teaser, but I'm sure that a second version of Krampus would be freaking awesome because of what we're able to do with Figura these days.
Not only is that not a no, it's not a yes.
I'm saying there's a chance. A chance.
So to say, Jeff Evans in the house. Good to see you, brother. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thrilled to see him.
So one thing that I always want to ask about whenever we have a chance to speak to you about these releases is I'd love to hear, there's not always a behind the scenes story, but, I look at all these accessories, and sometimes you've talked before about, there was just this piece or that piece that, Eric really wanted to do. Was there anything in the set here that almost didn't make it, or anything that, for example, might have presented something of a challenge that you guys had to overcome before it was included in the set? Something like that.
The only thing that I remember is the crown was originally not removable. So originally, the crown was part of the head. It was attached on there. And then immediately it was kind of like, okay, well, I know people are going to want to use this head just as like an elephant head. Like they're going to want to, use it for its component parts. So how is that helmet attached? Is it going to be keyed? And then it just got to the point where it was like, well, why don't we just make it removable? Because at one point it was like, should we put a second head in there? But this head is so large that this is one of those things that adding a second head would have increased the price of the figure. Yeah. So that was an early discussion point. And to be able to make the crown removable, because that's always one of the challenges with anything that's removable, is it's not easy to make something removable and ensure that it looks really good on and off and it actually stays on. Like a lot of times there's a compromise with some of that stuff. This, I think, was executed very, very well. It looks really well and seamless on. It looks really, really good off. And I mean, if you turn it upside down and shook it, it's going to fall off. But in just normal, like everyday posing and stuff, it's solidly on there.
Yeah, and then when as I continue to look at the pictures, another thing that jumps out too is again CJ, see Jessen with the soft goods here, continuing to kill it. And I know from Bill's review that those pants, those are not even really pants. Yeah. They're like a wrap, like a complicated wrap, right?
Yeah, and I saw someone jokingly say that, "Oh, I'm not feeling the MC Hammer pants," and it's like, yeah, dude, I get it, but that's how he's depicted. Like, again, back to faithful, respectful representation of the character. This is what the character looks like. This is what the character wears. So, yeah, just another example of, CJ doing wonderful work, doing a different kind of project here. It's definitely an interesting addition on the figure. It's very different than any soft goods we've done. They are a little fiddly just because of the way they fit, but that is literally how that would fit anyway. So it looks really, really good, but it's one of those things that you're going to take a few extra seconds when posing just to make sure it lines up the way you want it to.
Yeah, it's always really helpful when. Never mind. I was going to say when people say stuff like that. But and to be clear, this is how Ganesha comes in the package with the pants on, right?
Yes, the pants are on in the package. I don't think the arms are on in the back arms. I feel like the back arms are separate in the package, and you have to plug those in. But the pants are on the figure. None of the jewelry is. So you are going to have to put all of those wrist pieces on and everything. One of the things that there's no instructions in the box. The one thing that I discovered is there are a couple of the pieces of jewelry that are a little wider than others. And you may think like, oh, those will just dangle a little bit. They're actually best on the ankles. Like the ones that are a little bigger, they fit really nicely on the ankles. But again, there's a lot of variety here, so you can build out the character the way that you really want it to look. You've got plenty of different things to do that with. The only thing that is meant, obviously, the neck beads are meant to go around the neck. And then in this photo, that other piece of jewelry that's currently around the crown, that's kind of like a bandolier. So that's meant to go around the waist. Like I think that in this photo, it's not even on. Trevor didn't put it on. It is in some of the environment shots he took, but that's what that is meant to be. It's meant to be, put like a bandolier.
Gotcha. And then, oh yeah. So again, this is a photo of the all-in package, which is sold out for today, but there will be another opportunity to obtain the whole package in the future, including the pin and including the number one thing that I always wonder about and need to see as soon as a Figura is announced.
What's the mug?
Are we getting a mug?
Yes. So, the fans have said they like the mugs. So, we tried something different with Monkey King and that wasn't as well received. We've since gone back and done a Monkey King mug to fill that gap for people, but we've heard people say they like the mugs. So we do still have some individual mugs available. The pins are sold out and the all-ins are sold out. You are right. When we do the second drop, we'll have a small amount of those again.
And if you buy multiple mugs or multiple all-ins, you can create this picture on your shelf too.
You could do that if you wanted to actually display it like that. Get 3 mugs. There's no limits.
How cool is that? I love this one too. From my buddy Jeff. This drop was very most fitting and touched me today as it represents remover of obstacles and new beginnings.
Better days ahead, my friend. There's always better days ahead. So take this as that moment to move forward in positivity and those better days, the light of that better day.
100%. Here's another great look at the pin. Pins. I've heard a lot of people say this too, Jeremy, and I count myself among these people that say that, I was never like a pin guy. Like I didn't have a jean jacket with a bunch of pins on them, but now I love my pins. Like I love the pins. I look forward to them. And I've heard a lot of people say that now, and a lot of people, there's a lot of variety as far as how people display them.
Mhm.
You know, the way I started was I have a tie that I put all the pins on, and I wore that to Legion's Con a couple of years ago, but it's full now.
Whoa.
So now I got to figure something else out. I got to Figura something else out.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I'm not a pin guy either. I mean, and the pins are totally an example of that's George's passion. George loves pins. So early on, he was the one pushing, hey, we got to do pins. We got to do pins. We had done pins for years, and they were never really very well received. You know, a couple people would buy them. But I don't know if it's because of the Figura pins, but there's been kind of a resurgence in interest in the pins. And, you know, we have them at shows now. They sell very, very well, and they always sell out. We don't make a ton of them, right? So we understand that not everybody buying Ganesha is going to want a pin, but we do really well with the pin. So it's a cool addition to have there. Oh, yeah.
Shout out from Trevor. Very good, very early good morning from Tokyo. Trevor is at Star Wars Celebration right now, which looks like an awesome time in Japan. Thanks for checking in, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
So who designed the Ganesha pin?
I believe this is Nate did this art. So that's one of the things is like Nate always does the side character drawings for the figures. But one of the things that's interesting about pins is there's certain like art requirements to do the pins. Like one of the things that has to happen is all of the different colors have to be solidly separated with lines. So like on pins, you're noticing here, these are all solid colors. Every time there's a color, there's another color next to it. It has to have a solid line break, basically. So sometimes the paintings that Nate does, we can't just make a pin out of it. We can use that as a springboard, but Nate has to do it as line art for us to make it a pin. But this particular one is one that Nate did again. He usually does them.
And it's a big pin, right?
It is big. It is a large size pin. George was really happy with the way this one came out.
I'm excited for that one. And again, you know, you alluded to them earlier on. Something else that we all look forward to, I think, with a lot of these releases are the environment shots. Some beautiful work here, again, by Trevor.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, this was another one, and this is kind of the overall theme of this presentation, I guess, is, you know, respectful. Is, you know, talking to Trevor to say like, hey, we've got to make sure we're careful with these photos. Like, you know, we don't want to show Ganesha in a way that he would not be represented. You know, you've got to think about that. Like, you don't always have to think about that with some of these characters that we do, because if you show Jacob Marley in a way that's very un-Jacob Marley-like, it's not like Charles Dickens is going to come back and yell at us and get very, very offended. This is so different for that. And Trevor, he understood the assignment and he absolutely nailed it with the different photos that he did.
Yeah, there's one. I didn't pull this one for the slideshow, but did want to show it.
Yeah.
From Source. This one.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's gorgeous, man. I love that.
Yep, absolutely great. I think that's the one I used to end the article because, and I should say that, you know, if you are interested in learning more about this character, even before you get that little booklet, one of the things I always love doing is on Source Horsemen, we always put a write-up under Figura Obscura for each character. That's fairly in-depth in terms of covering, you know, not only the character itself and some information about it. Depends on the character. Like when we did Marley, I talked about different ways Marley's been represented in media over the years. Same thing with Father Christmas. I talked about a lot of the old world legends that led to the Coca-Cola Santa that we kind of know today, at least, certainly here in America. And similarly with this one, I talk about some of the stories of Ganesha, and then we talk about Ganesha in Figura Obscura and the nuts and bolts of what the figure is and what it comes with. But those are on Source Horsemen, and I've been told by a number of people that they're very enlightening reads, they're very enjoyable reads, and I'm thrilled that we're able to make that part of Figura Obscura.
Yeah, and again, we mentioned it sort of at the beginning of this conversation, but that's one of the cool things that people keep coming back to with the Figura releases is that a lot of us are being exposed to different things that we didn't really know about before. Like I mentioned before, I am like kind of superficially aware of who Ganesha is, but I'm looking forward to, like, this is inspiring me to take a closer look. Monkey King, I got to be honest with you, somehow I had missed it. I didn't know anything about the Monkey King before it was released. I was talking to people earlier who said that they didn't really know about Red Death before this came out, and they checked it out after that.
Yeah, dude, that one, it made me real. You're very welcome, Curtis.
Curtis is a super chat. Jeremy, thanks for getting Darla to read today.
So I've said this before that I live in Rhode Island. Edgar Allan Poe has a tie in to Rhode Island, right? So I grew up like in high school and everything. We read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe. Around the holidays, you can go for ghost walks in Providence, and they'll show you some of the places where, Edgar Allan Poe used to visit, and they'll read like The Conqueror Worm and The Raven and stuff. So Poe is always part of, my education. I never really realized until that figure that Edgar Allan Poe, that's a piece of American literature. Outside of America, it is not widely known and widely read. Like a lot of our friends over at the Euro Legions group, they were like, yeah, I've never been exposed to any of this. And I found that very, very, very interesting.
100%.
And similarly with Monkey King, I also somehow knew really nothing about Monkey King. And then when I started researching it, and I was like, I'm also not a Dragon Ball Z fan, but when I discovered that, that was a lot. Monkey King Sun Wukong was an inspiration for Son Goku in Dragon Ball, and then learning about all this other stuff. And then I don't know about you, but I started seeing lots of references to Monkey King.
Yeah.
And I'm like, were these always here? And I just never noticed it before. All of a sudden, it felt like Monkey King was everywhere.
Yeah. And I'm sure this is going to happen.
Yeah, we're going to see Ganesha everywhere. Yeah.
I actually, that happened to me earlier today. I was like, I stopped by the local shop to pick up a little tea and lemonade monster, and behind the counter, the guys had a little display of Ganesha up there, and I was like, and I almost pulled out the phone and showed it to them, but I was like, you know what, hold on, maybe later I'll mention it, but it's pretty cool. Again, for anybody out there who hasn't seen it yet, you want a really great in-depth look at the release, check out the Dork Lair YouTube channel. Bill, as he always does a really, really great review. There's some good comparisons in there. He shows he is brave enough to sort of strip the figure down and take everything off and show you kind of how it goes together. That's another great thing with these. This to me is going to be an art piece. When it comes in, it's going to go up on my shelf. It'll have a prized position there. But a lot of people, as soon as they look at it, say, wow, there's so many different things I can do with it. So I'm sort of excited to see sort of both sides of it.
Yep.
All right, let's I think this is a good time to run the giveaway here. And again, last chance here, 38 entries, really good odds for you to win the original Jacob Marley, one of my favorite figures ever. So in honor of Figura Obscura Saturday, we're going to give this bad boy away. So this is your last chance. Hashtag Ganesh for your chance to win. And we'll give this guy away in 3, 2, 1. Good luck. Let's see who we got. Boom, Brian Brink.
Ooh.
Second win in a couple of weeks. I think Brian won one of the $25 gift cards.
Nice.
During the Dragon campaign. Congratulations, Brian. We'll touch base
Congratulations.
offline here, and I will get this out to you early next week.
Very cool.
Jeremy, dude, thank you so much again.
Thank you, man.
Always enjoy doing this on a Saturday. Take some
thank
time out
you.
of your day.
Thank you for having me, man. I love it as well. And thank you for all of the positive feedback from everyone today, the positive comments and vibes around Ganesha. You know, this was definitely one that we weren't sure how this was going to be received, right? Because again, as we talked about, it is an active deity. It's not as, fighty and monstrous as some of our stuff. It is a labor of love. This is what Eric wanted to do. It is very much an artistic vision. But if you compare this to, Headless Horseman and Krampus, it's a very different kind of toy release. So there's always that kind of, not concern, but always that wondering of, okay, how is our audience going to respond to this? And it's been amazing so far to hear all of the positivity that we've gotten. So thank you to everyone. There are still some available at storehorseman.com for this first drop. Of course, we're going to get one, that second drop as well. But if you want to get one in the first drop, shipping is going to start this Monday. You definitely want to get in there today or tomorrow morning to get that ordered.
Yep. And you still got right now live shot at storehorseman.com. You can still pick up Ganesha, the package there, the release,
Yep.
Not the all in, but the figure and all the accessories and everything, and the mug still available.
For
in
sure.
addition to a bunch of other great stuff. And his demise, not quite accurate. Swig is still available.
Oh, Diego must have put some more. Yeah, if you're in the US, the $10 shipping does apply. So if you grab Ganesh, multiple other items, whatever, if you are in the US, you can ship it all for the $10, which is, that's a game changer for a lot of people.
TSJ, of course, keeping a close eye on the numbers here. But yeah, another great point. $10 shipping, throw in some extra figures there.
Yeah.
Jeremy, thanks again, man. Look forward to speaking with you next time. And guys, check out this awesome release. It's pretty incredible. And thanks to everyone again for stopping in the chat. Thanks to everyone who will check us out on the replay. And until next time, don't forget the number one rule, which is be cool.
Be cool.
Later.
So I'll see you guys in November.